Do you know where conflict truly begins? Where war really starts? Not on the battlefield, not in the government, not in religion or politics or ideology. It begins somewhere far more intimate, far more dangerous, and far more real. It begins inside you. That's not a metaphor. That's the terrifying truth Carl Jung spent his entire life uncovering. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. If you've ever asked yourself, why do people fight? Why is there so much division? Why do families fall apart? Nations go to war, friends become enemies. Why does the world feel like it's always breaking apart? Then you're exactly where you need to be. Because this video won't just give you answers. It will give you a mirror, a revelation, and maybe even a quiet kind of peace. We're going to look at conflict, not from the news, not from textbooks, not from slogans, but from the soul. We'll see how Jung's timeless insight that every war outside begins with a war inside explains the chaos of the world and the chaos of our own hearts. And when you understand that, you'll never look at anger, blame, or division the same way again. So let's begin. Let's ask the question no one dares to ask out loud. What if war is not something that happens to us, but something we carry within us? And what if, by facing that truth, we could stop it? This is Carl Jung's answer, and it might change everything. If war begins within the soul, then we must ask, what part of the soul starts it? Carl Jung had a name for it. He called it the shadow. The shadow is not a monster. It's not evil. It's simply the part of you that you don't want to be. It's the anger you suppress, the envy you hide, the selfishness you deny, the cruelty you justify, the pain you never speak of, even to yourself. The shadow is everything you wish you weren't, but still are. And here's the paradox. The more you deny it, the more power it has over you. Think of a man who prides himself on being peaceful, calm, spiritual, above it all. He meditates. He reads books about compassion. He avoids conflict. But one day, someone says the wrong thing, touches a nerve, disrespects him, and suddenly, from nowhere, he explodes. He says things he didn't even know he could say. His eyes burn. His hands shake. He becomes something else. That something else wasn't new. It had always been there. It was just hidden, locked away in the basement of his psyche. That was his shadow. Now imagine millions of people with unacknowledged shadows, each convinced they're the good ones, each projecting their denied darkness onto others, onto politicians, neighbors, races, religions, even family members. What happens? You get division, you get blame, you get propaganda, you get persecution, you get war. As Jung said, the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. In other words, what we refuse to deal with inside ourselves, we are doomed to fight outside ourselves. You've seen this, haven't you? A marriage that crumbles not because of one great betrayal, but because of 1,000 tiny shadows, resentments unspoken, needs unmet, shame unshared. A parent who punishes their child for being lazy, not realizing they're punishing the part of themselves they hated as a kid. A political party that calls itself pure, righteous, and moral, while demonizing every opposing voice as corrupt, evil, unworthy of existence. It's not just politics. It's not just culture. It's the shadow. running wild. Jung warned us. The shadow that is not faced doesn't disappear. It waits, and eventually it will emerge. If not in reflection, then in reaction. If not in dialogue, then in destruction. That's why he called it a psychic epidemic, because when the shadow infects not just one person, but a group, a tribe, a nation. Violence becomes collective. And the worst part? Each side always thinks they're the good guys. That's the real tragedy of war. Everyone believes they're defending the light, while blindly acting out their darkness. You might be wondering, but how do I know what's in my shadow? It's not easy. It's not comfortable, but it's simple. Look at what triggers you, what enrages you, what you judge harshly in others, what you overreact to. Your shadow lives in those reactions, because what we hate most in others, is often what we cannot bear to see in ourselves. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Let that settle. Most of us are living out patterns we don't understand. Repeating emotional wars we didn't start. Acting out pain we never named. Waging battles that don't need to be fought. If only we had the courage to face what's been buried. In the next part, we'll explore what happens when those inner shadows go unchecked in groups, and how mass psychology can turn an ordinary society into a war machine, without a single person realizing they've lost control. But before we go there, pause for a moment. Ask yourself quietly, what is the one thing I judge most in others? And what if that thing is also trying to speak to me? Because that is where the war truly begins. And it's also where peace, real peace, can begin too. The shadow on its own is dangerous. But when it joins with others, when it fuses into the group, the tribe, the nation, it becomes something far more terrifying. It becomes a collective monster. Jung warned us of this over and over again. He saw what happens when individuals lose themselves in a crowd, not just their names, not just their voice, but their inner voice, their conscience. The larger the crowd, the more negligible the individual, Jung wrote. And with the loss of individuality comes the loss of responsibility. You've seen this in history. Germany in the 1930s, educated, cultured, philosophical Germany, descended into genocidal madness. Not because the people were monsters, but because they became possessed by something greater than themselves. A dream of purity, power, order. And in the name of that dream, they silenced their doubt. They ignored their guilt. They followed the shadow, all the way to Auschwitz. That wasn't politics. That was psychology. A mass psyche, hijacked by a denied darkness. Jung called this process inflation. It happens when the ego, the I, expands to include a group identity so powerful that all personal conscience is swallowed. Suddenly, you're not just a person. You're a patriot, a revolutionary, a spiritual warrior, a truth teller, a chosen one. And anyone who disagrees with you, they're not just wrong. They're dangerous. They're evil. They must be silenced. Or worse, this is how cancel culture begins. This is how civil wars ignite. This is how totalitarian states are born. Not from monsters, but from crowds of people, each convinced they're on the right side of history. Do you feel immune to this? Ask yourself, have you ever been in a group where disagreement felt dangerous? Where silence seemed safer than speaking up? Where moral superiority was a currency? and public shaming a sport? If so, you've touched the edge of what Jung warned us about. He said, people don't have ideas. Ideas have people. And when the wrong idea takes hold of a wounded group, when the shadow infects the whole, it spreads like a psychic virus. Let's bring it closer to home. Think of a family where one child is scapegoated. Everyone says the child is the problem. The lazy one, the emotional one, the rebel. All the family's anxiety gets dumped there. But look deeper, and you'll see that child is just carrying what the whole family refuses to face. They've projected their shadow onto the one who can't hide. Now scale that up to a school, a community, a country. You get the same dynamic. One group becomes the problem, and everyone else gets to feel pure. But the hatred that follows isn't truth. It's fear. It's disowned guilt. It's shame in disguise. And eventually, it turns violent. Jung believed that evil enters the world not through devils, but through unexamined group psychology. When conscience is replaced by ideology, when compassion is replaced by righteousness, when questions are replaced by slogans, the soul is in danger. And the shadow? It claps its hands because it knows. They think they're the light now. I can move freely. So what can we do? We can start by remembering this. No group is entirely good. No side is completely pure. The moment you believe otherwise, that's the moment your shadow has begun to lead. We must resist the urge to dissolve into collectives that offer identity without responsibility. We must remain awake, not just politically, but psychologically. And, above all, we must be brave enough to be individuals. Because when one person says no, when one person remembers their humanity, the spell can break. That's how crowds become conscious. That's how wars lose their momentum. That's how peace, slow, fragile, but real, begins. In the next part, we'll explore something shocking. That conflict is not the enemy. It may even be necessary. The problem isn't that we fight. It's how we fight, and why. But before we go there, ask yourself this. When was the last time you were part of a group that made you feel a little too righteous? And what part of yourself did you silence? To belong, we've been taught to fear conflict. To avoid it, suppress it, cover it in smiles, or turn it into a war. But Carl Jung saw conflict differently. He didn't fear it. He studied it. He listened to it. And then he revered it. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, he said. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And what forces us to face the soul? What cracks us open? What makes the unconscious rise to the surface? Conflict. Not all conflict is destructive. Some is divine, because without it, nothing grows. No seed becomes a tree. No child becomes an adult. No soul becomes whole. Every transformation, personal, relational, spiritual, passes through a threshold of tension. It's as if life says, you want to grow? Then first, you must hold opposites. You must carry contradiction. You must stop running and stay. Let's look at real life. You're in a relationship. You love this person, but they challenge you. They say things that sting. They have values you don't understand, needs you don't know how to meet. Now you have a choice. You can suppress, pretend, perform peace. You can attack, blame, withdraw. Or you can stay in the fire. You can let the conflict shape you. refine you, force you to confront your ego, your fears, your wounds. This is the sacred third option. This is what Jung meant by individuation. Not becoming perfect, but becoming whole. He wrote, "Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life. Most of us want resolution, answers, certainty, agreement. But the soul grows in paradox when we allow two truths to coexist. I love you, and I'm angry with you. I want peace, and I crave justice. I'm wounded, and I've wounded others." Holding both without collapsing into one. That's where evolution begins. Think of history's great healers: Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King Jr. Gandhi. They didn't avoid conflict. They walked into it. Awake. They carried pain without becoming vengeance. They held the tension between love and truth. And through that paradox, they moved nations. Now bring it back to yourself. Where are you avoiding conflict? Where are you demanding premature peace? Where are you fighting when you could be listening? Sometimes what looks like a problem is really a portal. The disagreement with your child, a doorway to compassion. The political debate with your brother, a mirror to your own beliefs. The tension in your marriage, a call to grow up or open up or soften. But only if you stay. Only if you don't run. Only if you learn to ask, what is this conflict asking of me? You see, conflict is not chaos. It's a conversation your soul is trying to have with you. And if you shut it down, if you numb it, deny it, blame someone else, that conversation doesn't disappear. It just goes underground. And one day it comes back, louder, meaner, harder. That's how families explode. That's how movements collapse. That's how you wake up wondering why life feels so heavy, because the conversation never finished. And the war never ended. Jung teaches us, don't fear the war. Fear the silence that avoids it. Fear the peace that pretends. Fear the stillness that comes from emotional death, not maturity. He believed conflict could be alchemized, transformed, not by solving it, but by suffering it consciously. By asking, what part of me is speaking? What part of me is afraid? What might happen if I stayed here long enough to grow? We live in a world obsessed with comfort. But Jung knew the soul doesn't care about comfort. It cares about truth, wholeness, integration. And sometimes the only way to reach that is to walk through fire. The next time you find yourself in conflict, pause. Don't run. Don't fight. Listen. Because it might not be your enemy talking. It might be your shadow, or your future self, or the part of you that's been waiting so patiently to be seen. In the next part, we'll ask, if peace doesn't come from avoiding war, where does it come from? We'll explore the final and most radical idea of all, that peace, true peace, is born from within. But first, let this land. Conflict is not the fire that burns you. It is the fire that refines you. We all want peace. In our homes, in our friendships, in our nations, in our hearts. But most of us search for it in the wrong places. We think peace comes when others change. When the world calms down. When the noise goes away. When the other side finally sees what we see. But Carl Jung knew better. He knew that peace isn't the absence of noise, or conflict, or even pain. Peace is the presence of integration. Think of your psyche like a house. Most of us live in just one room, the room we like. The calm room, the capable room. The kind room got the rest of the house. We lock it. We avoid it. We pretend the screams coming from the basement don't exist. But they do, and peace doesn't come by soundproofing the door. Peace comes by opening it, lighting a candle, and walking in. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation. The slow, sacred process of becoming whole. It doesn't mean becoming perfect, or enlightened, or always calm. It means owning all of who you are, your love and your rage, your wisdom and your wounds, your light and your shadow. And in that ownership, something extraordinary happens. The inner war ends, because when you stop fighting yourself, you stop needing to fight the world. You've probably met someone like this. They don't need to prove anything. They don't collapse under disagreement. They can hold pain, yours and theirs, without flinching. They listen more than they speak. They see clearly, without judgment. They're not numb. They're not naive. They're integrated. Their peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from depth. And it radiates. You feel safer just being near them. That's not charisma. That's soul work. Jung believed this kind of inner peace wasn't just personal. It was political, spiritual, revolutionary. Because a society made of integrated individuals is a society that does not need scapegoats. It does not need to dominate. It does not need to pretend that it can disagree without destroying. It can mourn without blaming. It can feel pain without projection. It can breathe. He wrote, "World hangs on a thin thread, and that is the psyche of man. When that psyche is split, divided, unconscious, filled with shadow, war is inevitable. But when that psyche is whole, aware, responsible, loving, strong, peace becomes not just possible, but contagious. So what does this look like in real life? It looks like this. You pause before reacting. You question the story your ego is telling. You ask, what part of me is speaking right now? You take responsibility for your feelings. You forgive, not to be righteous, but to be free. You stop needing to win every argument. You stop chasing peace outside and start building it inside. You stop demanding that others change because you've changed. And suddenly, the world feels less like a battlefield and more like a mirror. Of course, this isn't easy. Facing the shadow is painful. Sitting with contradiction is exhausting. Choosing wholeness over ego is a daily discipline. But the reward is beyond words. It's the ability to walk through chaos without becoming chaos. It's the power to hold another person's pain without needing to fix or control them. It's the quiet knowing, I have made peace with myself, and because of that, I no longer need war. Jung never promised us comfort, but he offered us something far greater, consciousness. And from that, peace. Not a peace built on denial, not a peace built on control, but a peace built on truth, integration, soul. In the final part of this video, we'll come full circle. We'll return to the world, to the chaos, the noise, the conflict. But this time, we'll see it differently. Because once you understand the war within, you begin to see every outer battle is just a soul asking to be heard. Now we return to the question we asked at the beginning. Where does war begin? It doesn't begin with armies or speeches or lines drawn on a map. It begins in the soul, in the places we've forgotten, denied, buried. Now we know something deeper, that peace begins there too. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you deeply, because most people avoid this journey. Most people turn away when it gets uncomfortable, when it gets honest, when it gets real. But you didn't. You stayed. You listened. You felt. And in doing that, you've already begun the work of becoming whole, of facing the shadow, of learning to love without losing yourself, of seeking peace, not from perfection, but from profound awareness. The world is still messy. People are still wounded. There are still wars on the outside and on the inside. But now you carry something different. A light, a clarity, a quiet knowing that while you cannot change the whole world, you can change your relationship with it. And sometimes that's enough to ripple outward into your family, your community, your country, because consciousness is contagious. And peace, true peace, is magnetic. So here's my invitation to you. Keep going. Don't stop with this video. Take what you've felt, what you've remembered, and carry it into your life, into your conversations, into your conflicts, into the silence between you and someone you love. Ask questions. Stay curious. Look inward. And above all, be gentle with yourself, because we're all at war with something inside us, but we don't have to stay that way. And now, if this video moved you, even just a little, please take a moment to like it. It helps more people find their way to this kind of reflection. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. This is just the beginning of a 7-part series where we'll explore conflict, healing, the shadow, and the soul, all through the lens of Carl Jung's timeless wisdom. There's so much more to come, and I'd be honored to walk that journey with you. Finally, and this might be the most important part, if there's something you're going through, if you're in the middle of a conflict, if you're feeling lost, alone, or overwhelmed, please don't hold it in. Leave a comment. Tell me what's on your heart, what you're struggling with, what questions you have, what wounds you carry. You don't have to explain it perfectly. You don't have to be strong. Just share. And know that I will read it and listen with care, with compassion, with no judgment. Because we're not meant to heal alone. Thank you for watching. Thank you for feeling. Thank you for being here, fully. Until next time, stay awake, stay kind, and stay whole.